1 second. It takes a second for it to load. Okay, we're live.
Wonderful. So I'd like to call the meeting of the P&G to order. I'd like to note that all members are here, as well as Melanie Metzger, Interim Director. Thank you all for carving this out, and I apologize for missing the last scheduled meeting. All right, Melanie, do you want to start us with the art exhibition policy?
Well, let's go through the agenda first. We got to do the roll call and public comment.
Okay, I acknowledge that everybody is here. Any public comments?
There are no public comments for this committee at this time. We do like to remind the public that they can submit public comment through the email, which is publiccomment@albanypubliclibrary.org. That is publiccomment@albanypubliclibrary.org or at albanypubliclibrary.org, all one word. And we also have the phone number, and I apologize, I'm covering for Rebecca and I always forget to bring up the phone number. Give me one quick second while I pull that up. And our phone number, you can submit by phone number at 518-290-6905. Once again, that is 518-290-6905. We do ask that you please state your name and address during your public comments. And that is it.
Thank you. Just moving forward, Melanie, do you think it would be beneficial to have a slide?
It might
for
be.
every single, just a thought, and then just have it up.
We can definitely make that work.
Okay, you must get tired repeating it over and over again. Okay, so the first one is the art exhibition policy.
Yeah. So,
and I had it open. Now I have it open again.
Okay. Did you want to share your screen, or do you want to have me share my screen for it?
Why don't you share my desktop is a nightmare.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, you guys seeing it?
Yep. It's awful small, but that's okay. I have mine up as well. Thank you very much for working on this, Melanie, and your staff. We were talking about the last time, if I remember correctly, that who can really judge what's high artistic merit? So that was scratched. And then the language replacing it is artwork must be vetted by the art exhibition committee or the branch management staff before it can be displayed.
Mm-hmm.
Jerry, Brigitte, any comments, concerns? Are we good with this?
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Jerry.
No, you can go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I know that we discussed this at length. So I think that's the language that we came up with. So I'm good with that.
If I'm not mistaken, the issue that I think was in question was the form for reconsideration. And I know it says addendum A here that I think that was scrapped because we were going to have a different thing there. Where it says number 4, to be considered for exhibition, artists must follow submission guidelines. And that's if there was a submission for called art. And then the library will determine the selection, content, arrangement, and location of the exhibits. And then the other issue was the form for reconsideration. We do have it. We did create that form for reconsideration. It's based off of our reconsideration of materials form. But Bob did make a note, our legal attorney, is why we feel that is necessary.
So can Okay, so I just want to, I guess, clarify where we're at with the policy first, I guess. So my understanding of what was happening was that we needed a policy that was essentially all inclusive in reference to, guidelines of where the public would have an understanding to even be able to submit art, and the submission of the art, who they would submit it to, and that submission, if their art was denied, who they would be able to appeal that to. And on that, in reference to the appeal process, approval process, whatever it is, it would just be laid out. And from my understanding, Melanie, what you clarified before was the reconsideration form that we were discussing previously was specifically for art that was already being exhibited. So couple things.
Mhm.
Yes, in reference to who's going to be the art, who's judging the art, for one. But is this reconsideration form now for art that is denied to be exhibited, as well as art that is already exhibited? Because I thought that was from my understanding, right? We needed a more inclusive policy for one, and then we needed reconsideration forms, either one that could handle all of the issues in reference to why art was denied, or the art that you see you would like it removed or you have an issue with. So is this going to be one all-inclusive form, or we were going to need multiple forms that delineated in the title, denial of art requests, exhibition requests, or reconsideration for exhibited art, or what have you, just to differentiate what really the issue was. And from my understanding, we didn't even have a form in reference to if you were denied to exhibit your art, to be able to kind of like appeal that, or say, this person, we're not displaying your art, you had, or even a time frame of when these artists are submitting, when we would have to come up with a decision, like, is it 30 days or is it, a week, or are we just going to leave that open in free form? So just some type of guidelines. Were we going to go back to the drawing board with this? I don't know. Where's everybody else at with this? Because I know that meeting was a while ago. So what's everybody else's understanding of where we are?
Can I speak to some of those questions you
Yeah.
wrote? Okay.
Mhm.
So I believe, right now, when it comes to policy, the board, helps modify any policy or, adjust policy as needed. And that the inclusiveness, I think that's one of the questions I'm going to circle back to in just a second. But right now, for our major art show with the Alpaca Gallery, that is contractual with Alpaca Gallery. They are the ones who curate it and such like that. So our consideration with the request to display art would be a procedural issue. So that would be done by the staff. And what we've determined as a staff is that we would do a website form where people, if you're interested in displaying art at the library, please fill out this form with, digital samples of your art that we can, forward to the correct individuals. If it's for the official art at APL display, we would forward that on to Alpaca Gallery for their consideration, since it's contractual with them. If it was for one of our, one-off smaller displays that we do in the branch, it would go to the branch manager. And then if for some reason it had to be denied by either instance, that would be a conversation to have with the artists by the individuals. And so we didn't want to put any timeline on it, because it might be, they might submit like, oh, I'm interested in showing your art. And we can say, oh, we don't have availability next month, but maybe 6 months from now we do. So we wanted to make sure that we didn't put so many restrictions with, we're going to reply to you within 30 days. We're going to do this within 30 days. You have to do anything with a specific timeline, because we might have a reason to display their art at a later time. And we want to be able to have that open communication with the artist, and not have it be so stringent. But this art exhibition policy shows the broader guidelines of how we do display art within the library. And so we would have the art exhibition policy that's what you guys have worked on and everything. So when it comes for the denial, we don't feel that a form specifically is needed for somebody to be like, we feel there would be a communication that would be had rather than an official, anything like majorly official, because I don't think this is trying to figure out, it's putting the cart before the horse. We've never gotten to a point where, a piece of art has been denied it for any reason. I don't, this is not a bridge we've ever had to cross. And I think we're opening up ourselves for liabilities if we put it out there that like, oh, well, we're already preparing for denial of artwork by putting all of this in place.
Okay, so I definitely hear with what you're saying. I don't really agree it's having a process or a policy for a denial is putting ourselves in a negative situation. I think it's covering ourselves on the back end. My concern initially when we were speaking about this as a patron of the library, it was not really understood to me, and I frequent the library quite a bit, how art was selected and how I will possibly be able to submit art. So the reason for the policy changes from what my stance was, is to have a transparent policy in reference to something easily accessible to a patron to be able to submit their art. The Alpaca website and even their art exhibit, what have you, is not user-friendly. Their information is not readily available for an artist or a lay person or anyone to be able to have a general understanding of how to submit their art. Myself, even looking on their website, it wasn't really clear, at least I couldn't find it, in reference to how I would apply for the art exhibit or who I would be referred to if I was just home on the computer trying to find out information or what have you.
And that's why we would do the website form, like a quick, interested in showing your art, what's your name, your contact information. Would you like it as part of the Alpaca thing and we could forward it to them? Or would you like it just as an internal showing? And then a way for them to upload like a digital sample of their show. And that's why we would keep it as a really quick and easy form for that availability to make it nice and easy for the patrons.
Do it right. So even if we do it on the website, right,
Mm-hmm.
which I don't have a problem with an online submission, or if you come into the library, get help with trying to be able to do your online submission, right? Mm-hmm. So it's not really about let's do it online as opposed to, or nothing at all. No, it's about having a process that's so easily access and follow. It's it doesn't seem very transparent if you're saying, you're just going to submit. We don't want to have anything really like on the books official as to what should happen once you submit, as looking on both ends of it, right? You're protecting both people. You're protecting the staff and you're protecting the patron, right? Or the artist, right? Because as staff, I know, I have a patron here, an artist, they submitted their art, no problem. All I have to do is standard guidelines. Okay, they get 30 days where I have to respond to them, whether it's a yay or nay. This is their contact information. This is what have you. Even if you're saying we don't have space for it right now, we will reconsider or submit your art when we have space in 6 months. We'll take another look at it and see if at that time we're able to accommodate your request. We don't have a problem with your art. We just don't have space for it right now. We might in the future. Maybe this isn't user-friendly. Whatever a response it is, there should be some form of response. A response.
We would never not respond to somebody submitting a form of that nature.
So when I'm
Can I jump in right now, if you don't mind, Jure?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We're talking about a form that Melanie, you and your staff will form for the website. I know you have a very large plate of lots of things going on right now. Do you have an idea when the language for that would be available for review?
Well, that's an I mean, I can share that with you. That's an internal procedure, so it wouldn't need to be reviewed by the board. But we can definitely share it with you, and I mean, I can have that. I mean, what we would probably include is name, some sort of contact information, a description of the art, a way to upload a digital sample of the art, because we would have to have some form of visual to see what the art was. And then, you know, what branch you would like it displayed at. So a checklist of what branch you would like it displayed at. Is there a certain time period you would like it displayed at, you know, preferred or any? So it would give them that, you know, a month, like selection of the different months or any month. And we would just keep it as simple as possible for the exact reasons Ja Ray is, you know, talking about, is to make it a simple process and not to bog it down with too many details that would make it unattainable for a lot of individuals.
Jure, would that answer and address some of your concerns about the art going up into the branches from somebody not going through alpaca?
No, so I don't have an issue with an online um an online application process to submit artwork. That's not what I'm saying. To have some sort of process that someone could refer to and say, this is how I could submit, even if that is a link on the website or, you know, whatever it is on the website to be able to submit their art, that's fine. Whatever way that it's done is fine, as long as that way is accessible and easily located by the public. My thing is having some sort of standard to where even if it's 60 days, even if it's something where you're responding to the person. I'm not saying that we're not responding to people if there's inquiries had. What I'm saying is just some sort of standard where if I know I'm submitting, I know at least 2 months, I'm going to hear from the library that they're going to say yay or nay, or at a later date, whatever it is. So I don't think that that's putting us in a bad situation. I think that that's covering us. And if a person doesn't agree with it, I mean, we can use the same form and just change some of the verbiage. I mean, it's not really, even if if they're submitting online, and it's even if it's an email reply, if you don't want the hard copies taking up space. And I get that. So if there's a person, because there's someone who looks at this request, right? It isn't a request that goes out into the cosmos and nobody ever sees it again. So we're doing an online process. You get the request. You say, hey, this is the digital copy of it. This is their art, whatever. Someone makes a determination when they're looking at that art, whether it's now, later. We can't do it right now. It's going to be displayed in 6 months, or we'll contact you in 6 months. There should be some sort of standard in an email response, if that's what you want to do, paper response, if that's what you want to do, to say, hey, we're not going to be able to display it at this time. We'll revisit this in 6 months because we don't have the space. We'll revisit this in 6 months. Hey, we don't agree with the content of the art.
Right. So
My thing is the policy having that just inclusive, like there's a guideline that someone can refer to.
So I think there's a terminology issue that we're having here right now, and there's policy and there's procedure. And the policy definitely can state, you know, the policy is, this is the way to submit the art. The procedure in the background is how we would handle it. And the procedure doesn't need to be spelled out in the policy, and it doesn't need to be approved by the board as well. I mean, obviously, anytime we have any type of submission form on our website, we have an automated, if it's not automated, we have a individual respond to it. We have our Ask a Librarian form. We have our, you know, request for consideration forms. We have all of those in the background. All of that's not spelled out for each individual form that we have on the website of how they're going to be responded to. They are responded to. That's exactly what we do as a staff. So that's why I don't want you guys to get so bogged down in the details of the procedure, because that's not what you guys need to be focused on. You just need to be focused on the policy itself.
So I hear what you're saying, right? Mm-hmm. I'm not talking about what parameters or internally. I'm saying as we are trying to be transparent to the public. It's very, if I don't have to know your internal procedure to know that I'm going to get a response within 30 days. I'm going to get a response within 60 days. If it's denied, what do I do? Like, I'm not
That, I hear you, and we're kind of running out of time. What, can there be a automatic response saying, thank you very much for submitting this? We'll be getting back to you very shortly. And if you don't hear within so many days, to please contact us again in the automatic response to the submission of the art, Melanie. As a recommendation.
I was suggesting along those lines as well, Sarah, as far as, we're in receipt of your application. We will review and get back to you within, as Jare stated, a time frame. Within, we'll
when we're
30.
talking about other information, yeah, I agree with you. When we're talking about other information requests or records requests, there's a time frame on there. We're not telling you how to do your job, but there's a time frame where a person will know they submitted a request and they should hear something back, yay or nay, within however many days. So it is not to try to strap down the staff or hold this to some unreasonable standard. It could be as long as you want. I'm not saying it has to be a week that you got to get back to this. No, it's however long that you typically take or you think is reasonable for your staff, no problem. But just on the other end of it, to be transparent, for what if something happens and you can't get back to a person? I mean, I don't know. All kinds of things happen. I'm just saying something where if I know I'm submitting, that I can have some general idea to when I would get a response back or what the next steps would be.
And I think that could happen with a generated thank you very much for your submission. If you don't hear from us in X amount of weeks, please contact us again. Would that work for you, Jare?
I mean, we all have opinions. It's not just me. We talked about this in length, and it kind of seems like the contents of the conversation of our last meeting are have been lost. So it just seems like we're back to kind of like to square one for what the intention was of trying to draft a more inclusive policy and a more inclusive reconsideration form. So
well, let's move then to the art reconsideration form, if you don't mind, and we'll come back to your point. Could you please put up the art?
But before we do that, just wanted to ask a question as far as, the transparency and inclusiveness. We're saying that the OPACA, that website is not really friendly or user friendly, and there's a lot of questions more than answers. So could if you're looking to submit something on their website, please refer to or use this link to, and they would go back to APL and how they would go about it.
I think, like, if we have the form, like if somebody's saying they're looking to do the major art show at the main art show at Pine Hills, that can be, thank you, we've received your request, we forwarded your art onto the curator for the curation team at Alpaca for consideration in the next show, or to be put on their list of artists for their next show.
Can it be on both? I mean, just in case if they went on Alpaca, for instance, they would be able to get the link. It would, bring them back to the link to how to apply.
I would have to talk to Alpaca. I can't guarantee you what I can put on their website, but I can recommend that we do that.
Okay.
So even with the submission guidelines in this policy, okay, let's go to the request form.
So I'm sorry, Brigitte.
No, I didn't have anything.
Okay, so the exhibited art reconsideration request form.
Are you seeing it? Did I share it?
Yes,
Yes.
yes.
So this was the most recent update to it. Obviously, we wanted the requester's name and address and phone number and email, their contact. Representation if applicable. The suggestion from Bob is to remove this part completely. And we would also do this on our request for reconsideration form for our regular book materials as well. So when we make the change for this, we would make the change on that form as well. Where was the art piece located? What the title of the art was, artist and description. Action you would like taken regarding this item. So either remove for public viewing or if they have another idea. Have you personally viewed the work? Because it's a similar question we asked with the request for reconsideration. Have they actually read the work? What do you believe is the purpose of the art? So I would change that so it would say art instead of material. And please share your reasons for requesting reconsideration of this item. Please be specific and attach additional sheets as needed. And then they have the signature availability for it.
And this is for art that's already being exhibited, right?
Correct.
And someone is not pleased by it. Okay.
And I don't think it needs to be on this, but just for my own information, it would go to, who would this go to?
So we have, when this comes up, we call the art committee. And right now I know the art committee is kind of in limbo at the moment because it has selectors, it has individuals from the board, from FAFL. And because we have the agreement with Alpaca, it would be with Alpaca as well. If it's a piece from that show, if it was a piece that was just hung in the library, it would be the administration and the board. So it would depend on where the piece is. Is it part of the Pine Hills art at APL showing, or is it a piece at one of our other branches as part of another?
Thank you. And what legal counsel has suggested is getting rid of representation completely.
Yep.
Well, it makes it shorter.
And he recommends that as well because it's on our request for reconsideration for regular materials. And he says he would suggest removing it from that form as well because it has some legal implications that he wasn't sure we would want to actually be put in the middle of.
Is it acceptable with that one change? Jarrett, is it acceptable with that one change made by legal counsel or suggested by legal counsel?
I feel that it just seems like we're like lost all the way back to square one kind of, but
So I guess I'm intrigued about your concern about this because these are policies and procedures that have been in place for multiple years, over 10 years in many cases. And so I'm trying to figure out, we have never had anybody bring this to our concern in the past. That's not to say that it's not a concern, but just in the many years I've been here, this has not been brought up. And where's the lack of transparency in these forms and in these procedures that you're noticing, because everything that we have is available. You know, we're pretty open on how we do all of this. And so I'm trying to figure out where your concerns with the transparency are. Because I guess I'm having a real difficult time, because if anybody ever comes up to us and they're like, oh, how do I display art at the library? We're the first ones to put them in touch with how to get, you know, if it's either Alpaca or putting them in touch with the branch librarians for the specific branch they're interested in. It's never been an issue because we're always extremely open and extremely willing to have those conversations with the patrons.
So so a couple of things in response to that, right? So the first thing with this form, with Bob's suggestion in reference to taking out the those two items, great, no problem. Secondly, with this form, I thought we were going to be working on it in conjunction with the other form so that we wouldn't have to do double work, so that they will all mimic each other. It's as simple as a title change. Three, your experience at the library and your experience with patrons is not everyone's experience at the library and everyone's experience with patrons. So me personally, I've had experiences where that was not the case. So I respect your experience. And when you're looking at it all around the board, you have to respect other people's experiences as well. So although you may not have a problem, or certain people who you've been direct in contact with who do work at APL don't have a problem sharing that information, that is not everyone's experience, right? So my job and my perspective is to look at it from a lens where we're ensuring transparency, because that was not my experience personally either, and other people's experiences, right? So I get that we have some people who work at APL who are very open to providing that information when it is sought. When it's asked of them, not a problem. There's other people who may go about it a different way and try to search on the website and try to find information that way. So either way, if you have a personal experience with someone, or you're interfacing with, if you're on the internet and looking at the website, it's not a transparent process in reference to how do I, as an artist or even a regular patron, submit art to be displayed in the library that I would like, or in the library in general. So that is my perspective, where I was coming from with it. Looking at this policy, it's not clear to me what the process was. So I thought we hashed all this out at the previous meeting, and now we were going to be moving forward with edits to the policy to be all inclusive in reference to the policy itself, right? So on the back end, your process, that doesn't need to be disclosed. Okay, no problem. I don't have an issue with that. As a patron, someone who frequents the library, I feel that it would be very beneficial to community to have some sort of reference to know, hey, this is how I can submit my art. Hey, this will be the response in reference to when I submit my art, a time frame to where I would know if it's going to be acceptable, if they're going to be able to display it, or just what a general response would be. I understand you're saying you don't have a problem sharing that information. However, that has not been an experience of everyone. And me personally, that has not been a personal experience of mine. So I'm trying to look at it. That's what I mean by transparency. This is not a personal attack on you. It's not a personal attack on APL staff. It is a attempt to try and facilitate a process that maybe other people have questions about, that maybe don't speak up about, that maybe they have questions too, but maybe they're just not going to ask them. Maybe they're just not going to, bother. Maybe they tried to find some information, but they couldn't find what they were looking for.
Okay.
Thank you, Jure.
Hold
Hold on one moment,
Okay.
please. Jure, we're looking at the form right now when a piece of art is up on the walls of a branch, regardless if it's a local artist or alpaca.
Yes,
and this is somebody, so I just have to feel like we've finished something. Are you and Brigitte okay with this art reconsideration request form to move forward? And we'll get back to your other issue about the allowing to what we were talking about earlier and being able to display and submit art.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
so we're good with this one with that change.
Right.
And this
We're
can go
taking out the-
forward to the board at our next meeting.
Yes.
Okay, I'm gonna let Melanie talk in just a moment, but Jeray, is it a training issue on the part of the staff that everybody is treated equally?
That's going into the lines of procedure. So I'm not, I should be able to go to the website. I should be able to go to the library and be able to easily access a way to submit art. That's all I'm saying.
We're going to add that to the website. We're adding that as a form to the website. So I guess that's what I'm trying to figure out, because you literally just said, I would like to be able to go to the website and find a way to submit my artwork. And if we include that form, how is that not addressing that concern?
So for one, I don't see the form. I didn't.
It's not there yet. We're putting that up.
And your pushback on that was you didn't want to put any specifics into the policy in reference to a time frame a patron would have that they would have a response, a denial procedure or process that they can follow to where they would understand, if my artwork is rejected, how do I go about making some type of reconsideration for my personal artwork that was rejected. From my understanding, that was your pushback when we first got on here.
I guess we just had a miscommunication. I was trying to figure out just the form for the request. And then I was mentioning that I didn't want to put a time frame on the response, because if you're telling us a week, we might not have the staff able to do it in a week. We might have the staff able to do it later, or if it's a situation with alpaca, we would have to work on their timeline as well. So that's why I just didn't want to put a timeline on things. But we would definitely respond, because it's a form that people are submitting to, and we always respond.
So
and not to make this even more complicated, and I think we're gonna have to bring this back at our next meeting, is that this is assuming that everybody speaks English who are artists and can understand it. So that's a big access issue. And the other big access issue is assuming everyone has access to a computer to be able to submit it via computer. So I think there's got to be another way of doing it in hard copy.
Okay.
Jeray, I really want to talk about this more, but I just want to see if we can get through some of the other ones and then come back to this, if you're okay with that. And Brigitte, do you have any concerns or thoughts?
No, I think you bring great points as far as the language, and then being able to access if they not have access to a computer, but they can always come to the library and get on the library. So, but to have something, maybe some signage as well. Like if you're interested, ask the librarian if you want to submit art, maybe, a little signage around the library or something like that. So people can see a visual as well.
Right. And the other thing is with being able to read English, there's all sorts of access issues there, but I don't think we're going to be able to address all of that right now. And we have about 15 more minutes. Can we take a look, please, at hazardous materials?
Sure, keep going. I just have to plug my phone in. Keep going. I'm listening though. One sec.
Okay. I reviewed it. It's over my head. But the fact that it's done with OSHA and legal eyes, and I'm sure the head of facilities have looked at it as well. Did anybody come up with any red flags or concerns with this?
Oh, I looked it over.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I did. Besides from regular typos or anything, the where is it? Just the last paragraph in the responsibilities, because I noticed in, I believe, paragraph 3, it was taken out in reference to, as well as the facilities manager's office on the 3rd floor, 161 Washington Ave. Does that have to mimic the same verbiage in the very last paragraph as in paragraph 3, where it says copies of written program may be obtained from Albany Public Library, Public Service Desk, and or each facility storeroom and prospective hazardous communications binders?
So there's a difference between the policy and the responsibility. The policy is where the materials are being kept for the staff to utilize them, and that's where they are in the individual closets. The responsibilities or the facilities manager or foreman is responsible for compliance. All employees or the designated representatives can obtain further information through the facilities manager at. So if there's a member of the public or employees want further information, that's when they contact the facilities manager at 161 Washington Avenue. Because that's pretty standard for all of our responsibilities on all of our program, on all of our policies. We always have one designated individual. And it's usually for this, because it's a facilities related, we have it going directly to the facilities manager, but generally they go to the executive director for all other inquiries regarding policies.
Okay.
So with those changes, can we have a motion to put this forward to, do we need to do a motion? May I have somebody do a motion to approve this with the amendments done by legal to be brought to the full board?
Make a motion to bring the hazardous material policy to the full board with the amendments of the suggestions of legal.
A second, please.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Thank you. We'll be moving this forward, Melanie, to the
Okay.
full board.
And that was Brigitte, the Charest second.
The board meeting absence. I just had a question. I don't know if anybody else had this question, but what about a legal absence due to health or being out of town? So an absence that is excused for whatever reason. So do we need to have something in here that says that isn't an excused absence?
But it's just saying that the board president would speak to them and basically like find out what's going on. So even if it's an excused absence or a legal absence, they're just speaking to them, say, hey, what's going on, right?
Well, no, I think it goes on to say that if you've missed 4 meetings, you've been, it seems that you resign as a trustee. Oh, I see. Without reasonable clause. I take that all back. I apologize. Thanks, Jarey. Brigitte, do you have any?
No, with that caveat there, because I don't know if it should in the policy make it clearer that excuse absences, or that should be in the language as well. But it does say with a reasonable cause, so. As long as you haven't, most people are excused. They have a legal reason why. Not a legal reason, but
Yeah. A life reason why, yeah. Jarey, are you comfortable with this?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm thinking that we're not amending it. So it's been reviewed and we just put the date on it. It doesn't need to go to the board because we're not amending it.
I believe you still need to take a vote to
Okay,
to-
may I have a motion to approve this as written?
I'll make a motion to approve the board meeting absence policy as written.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? It's carried. Thank you, ladies. The next one we're looking at is behavior. And I know, Melanie, you had some suggestions about language for this particular policy.
Give me 1 second here. You guys are still seeing the policy right now, right?
Any little
Yeah.
policy.
Yes.
Okay, just making sure you're, because I'm having to search for my questions, so I just wanted to make sure you're not getting all bogged down in my searches.
And while you're looking at your notes, there was some language that I thought was under examples of unacceptable activities. It talks about tobacco products, including e-cigarettes. Do we need to include marijuana or other substances? Because not everything is tobacco. So it doesn't need to be a smoking, no smoking or e-cigarettes. That's one thing I thought about. The other one was where it says sleeping, lying down, or engaging in activities which interfere with library use. Is that significant? I mean, I don't want to be telling a mother her infant can't be sleeping in the library. And is that enough language saying interfering with library use? It probably is, but I just wanted to throw that out there. And the other one that the part with engaging in loud, loud is a problem for me. What happens if somebody is like hearing impaired? So for me, loud is a problematic word. I think it's more aggressive or threatening contact than perhaps loud or exuberant. And then the following one, last one for me, is you talk about having bodily hygiene that is offensive, but there are some, I'm a mother of teenage children and they overdid it with Axe. And there are people who overdo it with perfume. I think it has to be more than bodily hygiene. It can be an offensive perfume or something like that. I think they should make Axe. Oh, and then when 5 boys come in with 5 different aromas of Axe, I mean, there's not enough fans in the world. And then the last one that I'm going to talk about is carrying weapons of any kind. Some people do have concealed gun permits. So I found that language complicated.
So let me just. So the tobacco incident situation, we have the tobacco policy, and I know we amended the tobacco policy the last go around to include the e-cigarettes because that was one of the implications of changes of that policy, what people were doing in the library, just changes to how people actually interacted. So we included the e-cigarettes. We have had conversations with staff. Marijuana is no longer illegal, but we would like the smoking of it because of, and it would almost pertain to the odors because of the, any smoke, the odor from the smoke and then the e-cigarette. We don't feel that that would be appropriate in the building. So we do feel we're trying to figure out exactly a good way to word that. So if you guys could assist us with that. The hygiene, so the wordings that we wanted to bring to this group, because essentially this behavior policy has been in effect for at least the last 8 years, with just minor changes, like once again, e-cigarettes and stuff, like minor things that had to be changed because of
Should it just,
societal changes. We were more concerned with a lot of the EDI work that we've been doing. Some of the language might be considered a little bit condescending. So one of the words, one of the big things to us was the disobeying the direction of library staff. The word disobeying is kind of really condescending in many ways. So we were thinking something more along the lines of disregarding the instructions of library staff or ignoring the instructions of library staff. As that, the hygiene issue that Sarah brought up is one that we can, that's one of the ones that we are constantly having to refer to. It currently states having a bodily hygiene that is so offensive. And we would like to potentially change it to having possessions, belongings that are of a strong odor that impedes the use of the library by others, including heavily applied perfumes, lotions, or hygiene products that may cause chemical sensitivities in others. So that's why we thought a lot of us have gone through trainings in regards to working with our homeless population, and it's not the bodily hygiene, it's a lot of times the possessions. And so that's why we wanted to make sure that it was addressed in a more conscientious manner to our patrons. So that's why we figured if we could change it to having possessions or belongings that are of a strong odor that impedes the use of library by others, including heavily applied perfumes, lotions, hygiene products that may cause chemical sensitivities. We figured that would cover all of what both sides, both Sarah has addressed and what our staff is concerned about. And then we did have, we've kind of adjusted the way we do food in the library outside of COVID state of emergency periods. All of our other statements are in the negative, like these are the things that we don't want you to do. So we just would like to align the eating policies that says eating and drinking in undesignated areas and having uncovered drinks in the library. So it would, the language would align it more with the rest of the language in the policy. The sleeping, it's difficult. Anything that I get where Sarah's coming from with the sleeping child and the sleeping. I think that's why we included it with impeding library usage, because it's the sleeping in the stacks. It's the sleeping at a table that is, you know, making it uncomfortable for others to use. I don't think a sleeping child would impede the usage potentially. I could see where in minor instances it could, but hopefully not.
I understand that also. And I think what staff needs to understand, if an elderly person, let's say, because I'm elderly and I can say it, falls asleep while reading the paper or nods off, that's different than if somebody is taking over 3 seats and lying prone.
And
so
for each instance, I mean, just so you know how we've interacted with patrons and before, we generally, it's if we do catch an individual sleeping in the library, whether it is the elderly person nodding off or if it's an individual taking up 3 seats because they decided to take a nap in the library, we don't kick them out immediately. That's always a, you know, we come at it as a concerned individual. We come at it with, hey, we noticed that you've dozed off. Is everything okay? You know, we don't allow sleeping in the library, but if there's an, you know, in most 99% of the time, it's, oh, I just dozed off, or, oh, okay, yes, sure. And in the case where the person's like, no, I'm going to nap here, then we progress it into, no, I'm sorry, you can't sleep here, you have to leave.
And then why is it under that sleeping, lying down, or engaging in activities, there's a question mark gambling? Is
I
that
think it's
supposed to be another, that's supposed to be another bullet,
It's
correct?
supposed to be another bullet point. I think it was just a formatting issue that we had because we wound out with a lot of formatting issues when we transferred a lot of the policies over to the new system. And interestingly enough, we had an interview with an individual today who brought up this specific policy and a specific part about gambling, because now online gambling is allowed. And are we going to discourage that? Because the law has changed. And so she was like, now that the law has changed, she was wondering if we would be potentially amending the behavior policy.
No, no, no. That's only at Caesars and FanDuel and.
Right, but it's online and they can do that in the library.
Well, it would be on their own personal device. Can people log into gambling sites?
If they're
I don't
legal in
think-
New York State, because it's not filtered.
I don't think you can, but I don't think you want somebody playing craps or something
Correct.
Right.
against the,
Right,
so
that's what
maybe it's illegal gambling.
That's how we would probably amend it, to say illegal gambling in the
yeah,
library.
online and they're doing it on their own devices, then yes, but yeah, like they're in their corner shooting craps or playing blackjack at one of the tables, no.
So would
Or
it be,
a nasty game of Uno.
but like you said, so if they're on their own devices, right,
Mhm.
then we can't control what they do on their own devices. However, if it's library equipment, even though it's legal, shouldn't.
The way the board has currently stated it's the unfiltered access, so we don't limit what people do on our library computers. That's up for
So
discussion.
for
That's another
example, right,
discussion for
marijuana-
another time.
So, but for example, right? So marijuana is legal, right? So,
Mhm.
but we want to put that in there. So,
It's not the smoking of marijuana, it's smoking.
It's the
Smoking
smoking.
anything.
I was gonna suggest, can we just say no smoking policy, and this includes da 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 da.
That
we
would be something to consider, yeah.
Yes, no smoking. And then.
Which would
and then
include any
include tobacco products, e-cigarettes, hookah, marijuana, the
Vape-
whole
vaping.
cigars,
Yep,
pipes,
vaping.
chewing tobacco, all of that.
And that, well, that's
So-
the chewing tobacco would be the thing that we would have to amend, because that wouldn't be smoking, that's chewing tobacco. So that's
So
why
it
it
would be-
was a tobacco policy instead of a,
Maybe you
Smoking
can chew
policy.
tobacco, just don't spit it.
so it would be the smoking and the consumption and or the smoking and or consumption or electronic usage of any altering substance. I mean, what would categorize everything?
so that's
Because
just, is that something that the board wants to limit?
We
The,
don't want, first of all, it's a safety hazard, smoking in the building.
Mhm.
That could cause fires, so I think
Yep.
smoking is one thing.
And then also, we don't want staff smoking on the vehicles either. So this includes the policy for staff as well as patrons.
we specifically have made most of our policies pertain to both staff and patrons.
Right. No,
That's why
I'm-
this one changed from a patron behavior policy to behavior policy, because we're expecting staff to adhere to it as well.
and it says tobacco products, so that would be chew as well. So I mean, we don't really have to delineate chew because it's a product of tobacco. So do we
But
really
then-
have?
I don't know about that, Sheree, because there's chewing gum too.
So it says no nicotine,
But-
you know,
But chewing
electronic.
gum would be a product, right? It would chewing gum would be a product of, if you're talking about tobacco based, that's a product of.
It's not the tobacco base that's the problem. It's the smoking and creating fire and
Okay.
creating the odor.
But I also see what Ja Ray's talking about, because in this policy, we say they're using tobacco products in the library because the previous boards have decided that they did not want tobacco products in the library.
But you just mentioned gum. So what do you mean by,
So if they're chewing, what is it, Nicorette
mhm.
or something like that?
But it's no smoke.
But that's not a tobacco, that's a nicotine product. There is that
Right.
Yeah,
delineation.
so, and we're not gonna, if they're chewing gum, that's,
Yeah, that's for their own, trying to curb their usage of tobacco products.
So help me out here, Melanie. Is this the first time we're looking at this as a group, the patron behavior policy?
This is the first time you three as a group are looking at this behavior policy. This behavior policy has been in effect for at least
Since
8 years now.
2018.
2014.
So what I'm recommending, but Brigitte Jarret, you can override me. We were talking about some language needs to be changed. Can this go back to you and your staff and come back with improved language?
So the improved language that we stated were those three that I did mention already. Those were the three that
But
the
we're not
staff-
seeing, but I'm not seeing it in the board doc.
Okay,
I don't
gotcha.
see this. So, things aren't stricken out and they haven't been. I don't know. Jarret, Bridget, do you feel comfortable bringing this to the full board, or do you want to see it with some of the
No,
finessing?
I would like to see with some changes, and I definitely have some concerns about, with the homeless population, because I know that's where it's geared to. So when you say,
I would be careful with it. It's not geared towards we're expecting this for all patrons. And
Well, I
it's not
it's
exclusively
not
the
a lot
homeless.
of patrons. I've been in the library, and there's not a lot of patrons that are not homeless bringing all their possessions in the library that may have a strong odor and offensive, or they're sleeping. Again, like you said, they may not off, the elderly person may fall asleep, but most of the time it's the person that has the paper and they're sleeping there and they've been there all day. So, I mean, I would just, like you
I would
said,
be careful because I will just say, I want to just be careful because it's not exclusively homeless. I've had many people that are in-home
okay,
situations that have done all of this as well.
okay, granted, but I still contend that, okay, we're just gonna go 80-20, okay? But yeah, I would like to see, that language right there a little, like you said, less of as Sarah mentioned, offensive, a judgmental is the word.
Judgmental. Yeah, if you could, you and your brilliant staff look at it and make sure that nothing in this is judgmental.
I have two questions as well. With the marijuana thing, right, and the gambling thing, is that something that Bob can weigh in on? Also, what about is there something separate for like animals in the library that aren't
Service animals.
that aren't service animals? Because I really didn't, maybe I just looked past it. Also,
We follow the federal guidelines for service animals. And when we have an individual who comes in with an animal, we follow all federal guidelines for what questions we are and aren't allowed to ask, and then make the determination based on the answers that we received.
And I'm guessing you're talking about the emotional support animals versus the service animals.
Right. Yeah, the emotional support. I'm sorry. Right, because that is different. Someone might have a disability and they have, well, each one is emotional disability, or I mean, if they're, visually impaired, they have their service, the dog is actually working. And the emotional animal is also working.
No, the emotional animals aren't necessarily working, Brigitte, and the law is a little bit different with that. Maybe Melanie, you can share with all of us the differences between service, guide, and emotional support.
What I thought it was for anxiety, depression, mental health.
It's
No.
not covered under the ADA compliance.
Oh, okay.
You
So
can't bring your
I'm trying
pet
to-
python in.
Oh, no, yeah, well, yeah. They changed those, parakeets they were bringing on planes and, goldfish and things like that, but.
Give me
Yeah.
1 second. I'm just trying to find a link to that because we have it listed on our intranet.
Okay, so while you're looking for that, before I forget. Okay, so with the gambling, right? The filtered and unfiltered. So inside the library is unfiltered. However, the Wi-Fi that we're giving out is filtered with. So how does that work? If the
Jeray, the only filtering that we're allowing is the computers that were purchased with the federal ARPA money. And those are marked as filtered because that's part of the federal
It was a federal
computers.
guideline to get that money.
okay, so the computers and the Wi-Fi, right?
It's the 100 individual laptops that were given out to the students that we identified through our community partners. And that program ends at the end of June.
And do we have any word yet or stats or anything in reference? What was
sorry,
that? Do we have any feedback, any stats yet on who received what?
We have about 50 units handed out. We've been working primarily with the Albany Housing Authority on that. It turns out depending on how you look at it, it's either a good thing or a bad thing. A lot of organizations receive the same funding. So there was a lot of overlap within the city of Albany. The guidelines for the program were that it had to go to individuals with educational needs. So that could be anything from preschool all the way up through college. They were really open with that. We've been working with the Albany Housing Authority. There was been several individuals when we explained to them that it had to be for educational purposes, they turned them down. So we've handed out a total of 50 between the ACAP Head Start classrooms, Albany Housing Authority, BOCES, and Literacy New York are the current individuals that we've handed out. Our other partners that we've worked with have all said they actually received funding already. So they received the computers on their own accord. So it was a duplicative process. So we actually wound up with more computers than we could actually hand out because it's one of the arguments I'm having right now with the federal government and funding of these programs is that they didn't think the process through and threw money at a process program without fully realizing the impact where.
Okay.
And this surprises you? That's
doesn't
rhetorical.
surprise-
It's a rhetorical question. Okay,
It doesn't
so
surprise
just,
me, but it would have been nice if they put the money into broadband access across the board because it's not the devices, people have the devices. It's the access.
so just to summarize, this particular policy will need some language change by the staff, and we'd like Bob to look at it as well.
So you want Bob to input on specifically the marijuana and the gambling, correct? With the
And the
changes in the law?
conceal and carry, because I think that was a great item, a great thing that she brought up as well. What do you do with is that something that, because technically, I mean, they're legally allowed to conceal and carry, so.
But I believe I have to remember, because is it government buildings? They're not allowed in government buildings, or are they? Because I think it's different.
This is why it's going to
I'm
Bob.
sure Bob will tell us. I'm sure he'll let us know.
So marijuana, weapons, and the gambling.
Yeah.
And then we're talking about, we don't want to have this policy aimed at people who are homeless. We don't want, I'm thinking also there could be people who drop off elderly parents or siblings in it as well, in the library as well. So we want to be welcoming. And also the library is a heating and cooling station. And I think that needs to be addressed as well.
And I have one more question. Now, when we're talking about bathing and changing clothing in the public restrooms, right?
Correct.
I get we don't want someone taking a bird bath in the sink, right? Like in the bathroom sink. I get that. But if they're in the stall, right? And let's say a kid comes into the bathroom and he comes to the library because he wants to read a couple books before he has practice, in an hour. He's going to go change into his practice clothes and then come out, right? So in the stall, not in the, just out in the open in the bathroom, but he's going into the stall, he's changing his clothes, and everything like that. So does that matter?
And this is what makes behavior policies very tricky, because I think, I want to say rational individual would realize the difference.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But individuals will nitpick, and if we allow it for one, they'll say, well, that person was allowed to do it. So you want to make sure that it's not, you want to make sure it's written in a way that it deters the behavior that you're seeing. And one of the things that I went to a session many years ago on policy writing that really stuck out with me is you always want to write policy for the continual behaviors and not the exception. So you don't want to write a policy for the one person that comes in and does something wrong, because that can be considered ultimately discriminatory, because you're addressing that matter.
So when just with that, if you look at this again, loud is something that's interpreted by each individual person. So your definition of loud might be different than Jare's or mine loud. So can you look at those where you talk about loud, engaging in loud conversations, engaging in loud, aggressive. And if you can go through this, just looking at that.
Definitely.
Thank you.
Scratch the animals. I overlooked it. I did. I knew I did. Scratch the animals. It's in there.
Yes, I thought we did.
Brigitte, you've been quiet. Have we given Melanie enough homework on this particular policy?
Yes. I mean, just like you said, I just don't want a particular group to be singled out. So that, we want to find a welcoming and an exclusive safe haven, as Jare had mentioned in our retreat, a safe haven for the community to come in and not feel self-conscious and, that they're being offensive because they don't have the proper hygiene. So
I think the library should do a construction grant so that you can have showers.
Oh, that would be a whole big,
As I keep saying,
that's a whole can of worms. Oh my.
I know.
as I keep saying, this is obviously a societal issue, and the library would like to stop being the catch-all, like, oh, let the library figure this out, and let the it's not within our mission to make sure the homeless population has bathing facilities. That's another organization, and I wish they would step up.
I know. My very last part of this loss of library privileges. I know you have another form somewhere that talks about it, but please ask Bob. In my understanding, I'm wondering if you need to do a little bit more about how to, not question, but if you wanted to, help me out with the verb here.
The reconsideration of the, or reinstatement?
or reconsideration or explanation or something like that. You have the loss of library privileges. And in the past, when homeless people were thrown out of the library in New Jersey, there was a big one. The library lost because there wasn't a reconsideration part within this policy.
So,
I know you have it in another policy, but I'm
So-
wondering if it should be part of this.
so definitely, I'll talk to Bob about that because what we have has been approved by Bob. Like he specifically, because we actually used to, before I came on, we used to, if there was an extremely egregious violation of the behavior policy, the individual would receive essentially a lifetime. You're never
Yeah.
allowed back in the library. And we have amended that. That's no longer the case. We do 1 year maximum with the stipulation that if it is for these egregious, and by egregious, I mean they've assaulted, physically have struck staff members or have done something extremely illegal,
Right.
they can be reinstated after the year if they have a meeting with our community services and support specialist and the director.
Okay.
I had a question.
about to ask
in
about
reference to
that.
I had a question in reference to that, to the loss of a library privilege to student. I said, you say violent or violent, like you just, the example that you just mentioned. You don't call the police?
We do.
Okay, so if they don't get charged or nothing happens, or
So this is a very difficult situation. The library cannot press charges on an individual if an individual was struck. So if Joe Bob came in and struck Sally Sue, a library employer, the library cannot press charges against Joe Bob.
the individual
Sally-
can,
Sally Sue can.
Sally Sue, right?
And that's their prerogative. We can't force that individual to press charges if they choose not to. It has been our experience that most of our library staff do not want to press charges.
Oh.
So the banning and loss of library privileges is our only recourse
Oh,
for that situation.
oh.
I have a question along with that, right? In reference to the reinstatement. So when they do the appeal, is it a certain well, for one, the community support specialist, is that a job that's rolled into someone else's job, or is that a separate position?
That is a separate position. That is our essentially our social worker on
And
staff.
is there okay. Uh-oh. What's that? Come on. And are they allowed, like, how many times in reference to, like, has this happened when the person appeals, or I'm not sure how many people appeal, right? When it goes to them, do they have an option to continue to appeal? Let's say they're banned for the year,
Mhm.
and they appeal it immediately. They're denied, right? And then a month later, they say, okay, I want to appeal again. And so what typically in your experience has been the process? What does that look like typically?
Our process is that if they appeal and their appeal is denied, then it goes to the board. So then the board, it gets sent to the board to make the decision if the library has denied the request for reinstatement. That has never happened. Generally, if the person is making the initiative to come back and willing to go through the meeting with the library director and with the community services and support specialist, and it's generally in addition to usually the member of the manager of the branch that the incident occurred at. So we do have that input as well. Usually the three that I have been personally involved in, and I think there's only been one other on top of that, the individual has shown remorse, has shown their agreement to behave in the library. And after that, when they're reinstated, it's a one chance after that. So if they mess up again, they lose their library privileges again, either for 6 months or a year. But for the most part, I have one individual who is at that maximum level who will come in and yell at staff and explain the process and has not gone through the process
Of the appeal you're
of
talking
the
about?
appeal. Yeah. So the individual usually comes in about once a year, yells that he lost his library privileges, and we reinstate. There's a form letter. There's an actual letter that states what our policy is, what part of the policy they broke or they were in conflict with. And then it says, this is the term of your loss of library privileges. Should you want to be reconsidered, this is the process. This is who you contact. And then should your request for reconsider be denied, you then have the ability to go to the board for follow-up. And that's all in a letter that we give to each individual.
So this particular person is just coming in, but if they're coming in once a year, then that means they're reinstated then, right?
For the one specific individual I'm talking about, his is because he had a permanent ban previously, because he is the one who struck 2 of our individuals. It states in his letter he cannot come back until he has the meeting with the director and with the community services support specialist. His ban is technically up, but he still has to have that meeting first before he's allowed back in. And he
Okay,
has
so
not
say a
done that.
permanent. So when you say a permanent ban, there really is no permanent ban. Is the max is a year, and then it's for review.
Correct. And then it gets reviewed at the end of the year to see if it's going to be reinstated for another year banning
And he's banned from, obviously, from all libraries.
from all 7 branches. Yes.
Okay, so it becomes permanent if the meeting doesn't happen, because
Correct.
every year then you reinstate the
For
ban.
another year until the meeting happens. Yes.
So does just one more last question. So does the ban for the additional year, is it just like a standard year, or say it's your ban until you meet? So let's say he failed to meet, right? And then 6 months later he comes in and say, okay, I want to meet. At that point, can he meet?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I'm all into access, and I promise. This policy assumes people are literate and can read it. And it also assumes that everybody using the library is an English speaker. So I'm going to go out there and say we need to have this in different formats, especially something as important as a behavior policy, and all of the out of house, not internally, but out to the public. I really, that'll be my push for this year, is to have it in different kinds of forms, large print, audio, just different ways in different languages, so that people get the access and understand.
Okay.
Thank you.
I just have one more question in reference to the example that you used about that individual for a year and he's banned from all the branches. How do you communicate that with all the branches, that this one person,
Every time there's a loss of library privileges, it gets sent to all branches. The notification.
And they know who that person is by sight?
Generally, yes. If they don't, they request if we have any photos. They're like, oh, I'm not familiar with it. Because generally anybody getting to this level, almost everybody will know who that individual is, because they attempt to go to all the branches and usually cause trouble at all the branches. But if there's an individual who doesn't know who the person is, then they usually reach out and say, can you get me identifying information?
Jeray, Brigitte, anything else to share?
I just wanted to, I guess, just make a comment in reference to your concern about access into the different languages. Wouldn't that just be a standard? My idea, right? It would be a standard in reference to different languages, a standard like across the board translation services is really what we're talking about, right? Because we're talking about different formats. So would that be regardless if it's print, regardless if it's the website, that would be that's a translation service that we're talking about, right? We can't translate everything, every single hard copy and every single whatever piece of material that we have, whether it be the website or hard copy, into every different language. So wouldn't it be like a translation program or something, you think?
So that's a very good thing to bring up. Anything that we have translated does require additional costs because we do have to send it out. We don't have on-site translators. So we do have to send anything that we do want in multiple languages. We do have to send that out to a translation service. We do have one that we contract out with. So it's not like we don't have one available. We do definitely, but they charge per document and per language. So there is an additional cost. And then going back to what Sarah was also requesting, the large type, that's easy. That can be done, fairly simply with adjusting the type of font size. Whenever we print something out, we can easily do that on site. The audio is going to require additional costs to record anything of that nature that we do as well. So for all of these, that's something, knowing that we're going into a budget discussion next week, to take into consideration that this isn't going to be an immediate, that would require significant financial outlay to make these available.
Right, I understand that, but there are, what is it, 42 different languages spoken in the school district?
60.
You see my point. And I just think it's something that we have to, you may want to reach out to Queens, because they have more languages spoken in Queens than any place else.
Yep.
You can reach out to Nick Burren.
Yep, I have him on speed dial pretty much.
So Sarah, I definitely get your concern, but I guess my question is, ideally, what are you thinking when you say that? Like, what would your ideal, like when you think about, we need these services, we need to be able to have it available for other, languages. Like, what is your idea of that?
I think
what
we
does that
need
look like?
to. I think we need to look at the demographics. We need to talk to the school district, see how many homes English is not spoken in, and discover what are the languages. And I'm thinking maybe there's probably an Asian language.
There's 5 primary ones that we've identified through going through the school district.
Which are they, please?
Spanish, Kareni, Farsi. I forget which, there's another Asian one, and I forget.
Korean?
I don't know if it's Korean or Chinese, because I know we have the Chinese collection at Pine Hills because of that. I know when I worked down in Houston, there were 2 languages chosen as alternatives for what we had. It was the Vietnamese and Spanish, everything that we had. So it would be a situation that we would probably have to pick 2 or 3 languages as our primary languages. And like I said, we do have the capability of, we work with a company called Lexicate that does on-demand translation services. So we actually have it where if an individual comes into the library, we can get on-demand translation.
So that's kind of what my question was to Sarah. Like, it's not as much as identifying what the language would be. I'm speaking about what is your idea in reference to implementation? Like when you think about giving access to people of different languages, ideally, what are you thinking about the implementation? What does that look like to you?
If we had people on staff who could speak different languages, would be fabulous.
Okay.
Important things need to be in languages other than English and different formats. There are people who can't see. There are people who can't hear. Programs should probably be signed in American Sign Language. That I'm not sure it happens unless people request it. And then I think we have to do it with ADA. Yes, it is a cost, but we also have to recognize that people have different, I'll say it, I can't, people are different and they come from different backgrounds and they have different cultures, they have different languages, and we want Albany Public Library, or I want Albany Public Library to be a place where everybody in the community can go.
I would
So
love to
that's
hear
it.
what you're doing up in Sales on
Oh,
this matter.
I have a very white service
But-
area and English. I mean, people go back to the Mayflower up in
But you're
Hamilton
still talking
County.
about some of the other things, the hearing impaired, the visual impaired and stuff like that. So I'd love to hear
Yeah.
what Sales is doing on this.
Okay. But now it's 8:33 and I'm not cutting you short and we can talk about it. One of the first things we're doing, actually, Melanie, is to making our websites accessible to people with disability, and
Yep.
so are you.
So are we, yeah.
With that, is there anything that we can talk about in 2 minutes so that Melanie could say the day is over for herself? I just want to make sure everybody has the opportunity to speak and be heard. So I hear we're only bringing really one policy to the board, correct?
Two,
And-
we're bringing the form to the board, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then we're bringing the absence to the board, right?
They're hazardous, yes. the
Oh,
hazardous-
And
yeah,
are we-
the absence, so three.
So no, the board absence, we don't have to bring to the board because you approved it with no changes. So it's a strict review.
The
Okay.
hazardous in the form. But we didn't vote on the form.
That is correct. You did not vote on the form.
Okay, so this is why we do a recap, so we don't think about it at 3 in the morning. I thought we did. Can we have a motion to accept the reconsideration form?
I make a motion to accept the reconsideration form.
And
Right?
Ah.
Because we're taking out,
with the amendment of taking out, correct.
Yes.
Can we have a second?
second.
Any discussion? All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Abstentions? And then the last thing I will say is, was there any public comment?
No second public comment, only the one
No
at the
second,
beginning
okay.
for committees.
Okay, and Melanie, could you stay on just for a second longer?
Sure.
I promise, only for a second longer. May I have a motion to adjourn at 8:35?
I make a motion to adjourn.
A second?
I just quick question before I second. So we're just gonna be going over this behavior policy, right? In the interim. We're
And you-
tabling the behavior and we're tabling the art, right?
So with the tabling of the art, what are the action that we're taking for the tabling of it?
So that's gonna open up a whole nother.
You want to see, can I jump in? You want to see the form that's going to be developed to go onto the website to make sure it makes sense and there's an ease of access. I don't want to put words in your mouth, Sheree, but that's what I
We can
heard you
leave it at
say.
that, but I just, so we can leave it at that, but I just want to just clarify. So technically, we're gonna table the art and we're gonna table the behavior, right?
Well, we're not moving forward, but it'll come to our next meeting.
That's not tabling?
No,
No? Okay.
I don't know. I'm not an expert in Robert's rules, and they're always changing.
Neither
it.
am I. Neither am I. But okay.
We're postponing it.
We're bringing both of those up for discussion at the next
The
meeting.
next meeting, plus probably another one or two. Tabling in jure, I think, means that you're not going to discuss it at all. We're just moving it to the next meeting. But I'm sure somebody with Robert's rules can define that better. So getting back to the vote, all in favor?
Yes, the
All
second.
opposed?
Yare has a
Second.
second.
Okay, thank you. Jare, all in
Right.
favor?
Yes, aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carried. Have a wonderful rest of the week. It's supposed to be warm tomorrow.
Oh, yes.
You as well,
Thank you.
guys. Take care.
Thank you very much, everybody.